Welcome back to week 16 of the gambling show for Free Tendies Fantasy. I'm here with Yanni. How's it going, man?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Oh, it's been an interesting day. Been an interesting day for sure.
Art.
Found out today why single moms are single moms.
All right, so let's get into the week 15 recap. And this one was a little weird. I don't know if anyone saw this, but we had a little scheduling conflict last week. Just a lot of stuff going on. Yanni just finished his school for the semester. He was driving back. It was like a storm up in Chico. We didn't get to actually making the video for the picks, but we did release a community note with our picks from last week. Editor Ted, go ahead and pop up the community note right now. But yeah, we did make picks last week. If you guys saw it, let us know in the comments. If not, I don't blame you. I don't know how wide those community notes go, but we'll just do the week 15 recap. I'll try and keep it quick. I'll just give you like a one or two sentence why I picked some of the games that I did. We had three consensus picks. It was Bengals, Jets. We had four consensus picks: Bengals, Jets, Lions, Packers. We both missed on the Lions, but we'll start with the ones that I hit. The Bengals minus 4.5 against the Titans. This one was just more of a this is too short of a number for a team that has been playing great offense all year against a team that's terrible in the Titans. That one came home. It was a kind of a goofy game, but that it just Will Levis threw three picks, got benched, and the Bengals scored enough points. I think the Titans put up like in the 20s, which was surprising. I didn't think they'd do that well, but still an easy cover. That number was too short. Next one was the Jets minus 3.5. Me and Yanni were both on this one. This one we got extremely fortunate to get the cover. The Jets were down the majority of the game. Somehow the Mac Jones and the Jaguars played some of their best offensive football I've seen them play all year. It came down to basically the last quarter. Aaron Rodgers hit Devontae Adams on like a 70-plus yard touchdown pass. Jets get the ball back. I think they were up like, or maybe they were down two or something, right? So a field goal would have won them the game. And they got inside, like they got to the 1 yard line with like Devonte Adams pass or whatever, and the announcers on TV were saying, "Okay, well you could just run the clock out and kick the field goal to win the game." The Jets did not do that. I think they were playing for pride. They wanted to get Brees Hall in the end zone. Brees Hall punches it into in for the touchdown. The Jets go up like I believe it was 4 points at that point, and then they held on like 40 seconds of Mac Jones driving. We got the cover. We got extremely fortunate that the Jets decided to do that, but we thank them for it. Sometimes in gambling you get lucky. The next one was the Lions minus 2.5 against the Bills. This one, at least my thinking going into the game was that it was the Lions rush defense versus the Bills very small, undersized defense in that the Lions would just kind of grind them out with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Turns out that is not how that went. The Bills and Josh Allen are playing at next level. They got up 14 very quickly. They forced the Lions to drop back and pass. The Lions did score a lot of points. I believe they got over 40, but the Bills just kind of played a game very similar to the one they had against the Rams the week prior, and they outscored them and won. Wrong side of the bet. I don't regret making the pick, but I think maybe it's time to start viewing the Lions as maybe not the cream of the crop in the NFL just because they're too injured at this point. The Packers I'll save for Yanni, and then the Falcons minus 3.5. This one was a pick for me. I know the Falcons are a bad football team. I was not a believer in the Atlanta Falcons. I think they're an untrustworthy team, but this was picking against Antonio Pierce at only 3.5 points. I said, screw it, why not, right? It came home. It looked disgusting though. The Raiders actually had a very good chance to win that football game with 2 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. I believe it was like 2:05 left of the game or something. The Falcons were in third down and medium. It was basically a Kirk Cousins you have to throw the ball situation. Kirk played like shit all game. He dropped back, totally missed Darnell Mooney over the middle. But Bobby Spillane got a really like just terrible roughing the passer call for hitting his helmet. It was a soft call, but it gave the Falcons an extra 15 yards. It ended up being the difference in the game. The Raiders got the ball back at the end, but they just didn't have enough time. It was a cover. It didn't feel good, but 3.5 against Antonio Pierce, I'll take it. So on the week, it was a 4-1 week. I hit my 3-leg parlay, which is the second time I've done that this year. The Lions ruined the 5-0 week, but it basically catapulted me up with that 3-leg parlay back up to over 7 units in the green. I was floating at like 1.5 units in the green, so it's like a basically a 6 unit week for me. Season record is at 43-32. I believe that's 57% on the year. Looking to keep up the momentum this week.
Yeah, I'll just hit on the Packers game. That one was a really easy pick for me. The Packers have actually really shored up their rushing defense lately. They're playing some of the best like football in the NFL. I think they might steal the division at the last minute. It's a little less likely on that, but I certainly think they're live for a playoff run here. So that was a really easy pick for me to take them against the Seahawks. Um, Man, for the most part of that Seahawks game, it just looked like they were a different caliber of team than Seattle, which I believe they were. So it wasn't really a lot of sweat on that. Really bummed that I had a 4-1 week, but I busted my parlay again. I've had crazy luck this year with parlays splitting. Like it's happened to me quite a bit. So I'm actually almost 2 units in the red, even at a 42-33 record. We'll see how that goes this week. See how it changes this week, but that's where I'm at.
Yep. And without further ado, let's review the Week 16 picks. We have one consensus pick this week. It's going to be the Steelers and Ravens under 44.5. Then my other four games that I'm riding alone on are the Eagles -3.5, the Colts -3.5. Then I'm going to parlay the Rams and Vikings both at -3. If the Rams Vikings parlay hits, that returns $372.73. If the three single game props hit, that's another $573.11. On a 5-0 week, could get back $945.84. The ticket cost is $400 because there's one 2-leg parlay. And like I said, sitting at a little over 7 units in the green, 57% on the year. It feels like I'm close enough now to where I probably cannot fuck up this being a positive money gambler this year, but want to continue to build on it and try and creep my way towards 60% on the year. That would be awesome for me.
Yeah, dude, 60% is sort of the big, like my grail goal this year. So that would be a huge deal for me. Units, we'll see how it shakes out. Okay, we're riding together on the Steelers Ravens under. I am taking the Bengals -6.5 versus the Browns. I'm taking the Lions -6.5 versus the Bears. Couple of big divisional favorites, always a little bit risky. I'm playing the Niners money line on the road against the Dolphins, and then taking the Buccaneers on Sunday Night Football, not Monday Night Football, I believe, right? On Sunday Night Football -3.5 at the Cowboys. My parlay, which I'm parlaying the Bengals and the Lions, is going to be for a potential return of $350. My other potential return is $570. Total potential return of $920. Stake in 400. Like I said, I'm in the red, about 1.9 units this year, and I'm at 42-33, 56%.
All right, and let's get into the game breakdowns. I'll take this one. It's the Steelers at Ravens, and we're both riding the under here at 44.5 total points. 64% of the money is on the under here, and 72% of bets are on the under. So this is one of our consensuses, but there is a slight whale lean on the over, which I think is very strange given the history of these two teams. I'm wondering if maybe big bettors think that this is like too hot of a trend and that Vegas is starting to catch up with how it's been. But overall, we don't always buck the trends, right? We love to make fun of trend bettors. We love to say that, you don't just want to bet on trends, but sometimes like they're really helpful. And I think that when you're gambling, right, you should use trends to help guide your decision making, not to be the end all be all of your decision making. So that being said, the last 8 meetings between the Steelers and the Ravens, which is effectively Lamar Jackson versus a bad Pittsburgh quarterback, whether or not it's Ben Roethlisberger with a noodle arm or Kenny Pickett or Justin Fields or Russ, whatever, they've all been under. So it's definitely 8 straight games is a lot to be under. And Tomlin's like this Steelers Ravens team, even beyond that, I couldn't find the numbers for it, but they have like, I believe they average 39 points per game, which is, I believe, 4 or 5 points under like what the NFL average has been in the time. So like this is usually a rock solid under to bet. So we'll start with the Steelers side. George Pickens is going to miss this game, and he's by far the most talented player on offense for the Steelers. We love part of the reason I faded the Steelers so much coming into this year was just how untalented the team was at the offensive skill positions, right? You have George Pickens, you have either Justin Fields or Russ, who I had tagged as being not very good coming into the year, and then a bunch of just cast offs, Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin, you name it. Like they just really don't have dudes other than George Pickens out there. So in order, in my opinion, for this Steelers team to score and take advantage of what this Ravens team rolls out on defense on a weekly basis, they're either going to have to abuse their impact defensive plays, which is JJ Watt sack fumbles, weird pick sixes, that type of deal, right? I know JJ Watt went down last week with an injury. I believe he's still going to be playing this week. You'd, so the only way I see him scoring is either the weird defensive impact plays, having Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin and Scotty Miller too is also there. Carry the load out wide, like the Russ Moon ball, right? You're going to be throwing it up on a 50-50 ball to Van Jefferson. That seems very low percentage to me. Or Najee is going to need to like run wild on the Ravens' first ranked rush defense. So overall, without George Pickens in the lineup, it's crazy how important he is to the Steelers team by virtue of being like the only seriously talented player on that unit. But without him, man, like it just totally changes the landscape of what the Steelers team wants to do and can do on offense. So we think they're going to have trouble scoring here. Then on the other side, do the Steelers just have Lamar's number? In 5 total starts against the Steelers, he's 1-4, and over that period, he has 5 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 7 fumbles, and been sacked 22 times. So that means he has 3 times the turnovers that he does touchdowns passing, and has been sacked like over 4 times a game. Plus, his passer rating is 66.7. So this is his worst matchup historically by far. Like by the numbers, Lamar Jackson dominates the NFC. He dominates the vast majority of teams in the AFC. But the Steelers get to see him twice a year. Part of the, I guess, the deal with Lamar is he brings something so different to the table with what he offers at the quarterback position. Then not a lot of teams are ready for it. But the Steelers have kind of shown they've been ready for it. Mike Tomlin is a great defensive coach. The Steelers have Justin Fields in practice to kind of play their Lamar type of archetype, right? He's fast. He can like simulate what Lamar does. So, I mean, 44 and a half, right? I would call that a middle-ish to higher total. We say on this channel like 40 to 42 points, I would say is middle of the road. Under 40 is like a really low total, and above that you're starting to get up there. So 44 and a half, like that's on the middle high end, right? And we see issues with both of these teams offensively. And so the math checks out and the trends are with us. AFC North has been one of the best trends to bet. We're going to ride with it and hammer it confidently. What do you think, Yanni? Did I miss anything?
No, not really. I mean, this is just a continuation of our bet last week, taking the Eagles. I think the betting markets are not properly valuing what George Pickens means to the offense. And it's weird because, like, you would say most skill position players are worth a point, point and a half in the total. I don't know, man. With the way Russell and Pickens connection is what drives the offense, I think he's worth quite a bit in terms of how I value the team. And I felt like last week that was not properly priced in. And again, I feel like this week it's not properly priced in. With both the over under on the game, the spread was a little weirder. I don't know. I've gotten burnt a few times taking the Ravens on bigger spreads. That's why I just stuck with the under.
Mhm.
But yeah, to me, I feel like the betting markets are not properly pricing in what the Steelers offense is without Pickens. Happy to take the bet.
Yeah, and this is going to be a big game too, right? Effectively, if the Steelers win this game, they will more than
Yeah,
likely lock up the AFC North. And if the Ravens win this game, the Steelers still have the Chiefs left on their schedule. If they lose this one and then one more game and the Ravens win out, the Steelers are a wild card team and they could realistically be looking at going into, I don't
Baltimore,
know. Yeah,
Baltimore.
either going into Baltimore, going into Houston, that type of team. They'd be playing a much tougher team versus like a Chargers or Broncos to me. So
Yep.
big game, lots of implications here.
Okay, Browns at Bengals. I've loved picking these Bengals all year. I actually don't think. I mean, I have to go back and look at my record. You have the kind of bias, right? Confirmation bias, but I could only remember hitting these Bengals picks. I'm trying to remember where it cost me. They actually cost me picking against them with the Ravens, I believe. I'd have to look back on it, but I think I've had really good luck so far this year with the Bengals. I can recall at least 3 or 4 wins I pulled with the Bengals, right? And it never feels good to bet them, by the way. It actually always feels horrible to bet them because they're such a weird ride this year. But look, Wales and the public agree with me. 88% of every dollar that's bet on them has gone towards the Bengals. So have 76% of all the numerical bets that have gone on the Bengals. That's actually a 12% whale lean on there. That's actually a pretty good amount of big money considering it was already at 76% that is coming in on the Bengals. Okay, ignoring the line that's not supposed to be in there. DTR's first start of the year. He's been bad his entire career. We don't see that changing in this spot, even against the Bengals leaky D. He has like been a significantly worse quarterback than Jameis has for the Browns. I don't know why they're switching him up. The only thing I can think of is if they're just outright willing to tank. If Jameis was embarrassing him, maybe like that Chiefs thing was so bad they just decided they couldn't do it anymore. I can't really imagine why they're switching to DTR. If they want to see what they have in a backup, if they're planning to release Jameis, so you don't have to have that narrative, kind of what happened with Flacco last year. That makes a lot of sense. I can't see why you would switch to him because it makes your football team objectively worse in this instance. I'm aware that 8.5, right? 8.5 in a divisional a road game is not great, dude. And especially with the Bengals, right? But 9 points to cover, I'll live with it. And look, the Bengals are officially on playoff watch. They have a real path here, okay? The Broncos dropping that game to the Chargers and the Bengals and Broncos playing next week. If the Bengals win this game, they play the Broncos and beat them next week. Then the Broncos are going to have to beat the Chiefs week 18. I believe the Bengals play the Steelers week 18. They play a divisional game. I'm not sure, but I do believe it is the Steelers. So the Bengals have a very real chance to win out here, and the Broncos have a very real chance to drop the games to the Bengals and the Chiefs they have remaining. The Chiefs may still be protecting their first round bye when they play Week 18. So to me, this is like live. They are live on playoff watch. I expect to see the best Bengals we see. I know their defense is really bad, but I don't think that's going to matter against this iteration of the Browns. The best thing the Browns have had going for them is that Jameis had a really good connection with Njoku, with Judy, with Tillman when he was out there, even with Elijah Moore. I think they kind of torched that, right? I think Jerome Ford's a perfectly reasonable backup for Nick Chubb. They're going to get their yards on the ground. I really like Jerome Ford as a start this week in DFS, by the way. And then just one last note about the game. Jamar Chase is currently on pace to win the Triple Crown. These next 3 games could secure him the largest non-quarterback contract in history. He held out before this year, and the word was he wanted $1 more than Justin Jefferson. $1 more than Justin Jefferson to signify that he is, in fact, the best wide receiver in football. I think he took that personally. I think they take it personally. They were really good friends at LSU, right? We've all seen that sick clip that goes around every few months from I forget the page on Twitter. There's a great football page on Twitter that just reshares sick moments in football history. And you always see them playing together. Justin Jefferson last week said they do not speak to each other. I think it's a sick rivalry that's all of a sudden broken out between 2 of the most talented quarterbacks of their generation, or wide receivers of their generation. I fully expect to see the absolute best of Jamar Chase now through whenever the year ends. If they can make a playoff run, all the better. I don't think the Browns have any response to him. God help you if you're playing Jamar Chase in the fantasy playoffs this weekend. I like everything about it. Joe Burrow's playing at an MVP level. He's just not getting the discussion because the rest of the team around him is garbage. So I'm very happy. Give me the Bengals. A touchdown and a field goal to cover. I think they've got this in the bag. They're playing at home. They have a lot to play for, and I think the Browns are looking to be put out of their misery.
Yeah, to me this is like I do like the pick. It's just the Bengals have just been weird all year, especially with covering these large numbers. They've done the thing where they play inferior teams very closely. That being said, though, right, the Browns' best path to success, like you correctly highlighted, was Jameis Winston and the variance that he brings. Sometimes he just tanks your team, but other times he looks great out there and almost throws for 600 yards, right? So
Yep.
you're just kind of saying, okay, like we don't care about that anymore. Let's put in DTR and see if he's worthy of a roster spot next year. But he's been so bad when he's been on the field. You, I think it's most likely that he can't do anything, and this Browns team just kind of flounders on offense. The Bengals should not have an issue scoring here offensively. So I like the spot. Gun to my head, I would pick it. I just came up with a couple ones that I liked a little bit better this week. I still like it though. All right, next we got the Eagles going into Washington, D.C. to play the Redskins, and I am playing the Eagles minus 3.5. The over-under on this game is 45.5 points. We got 87% of the money on the Eagles against the spread, and 74% of bets are on the Eagles against the spread. I am once again picking again against a home divisional underdog. I actually am this time. Yanni's game was not home divisional underdog. I'm not a slave to the trends. We are not slaves to the trends, and the public and the whales agree with me here. Public and the whales aren't taking that too seriously. The first thing I want to talk about is potentially the most underrated head coach of all time. I think he's probably getting in the conversation for the greatest coach of all time. Nick Sirianni, he's fifth all time in head coach winning percentage at 70.8%. That's higher than Don Shula, by the way. And the Eagles have ripped off a franchise record straight 10 wins since he shaved his head and yelled at the home fans. He's clearly an all time leader of men. I don't understand why he doesn't get the publicity Dan Campbell does. Very clearly, one of the best at what he does in the NFL, a real force multiplier for old Philly. Um, Moving on to the old Redskins. They have been doing enough, just enough to get by, but it has not looked great over the past 5 weeks. They had the really hot start. The Redskins have been one of the, I think probably the public's favorite teams because of their just turnaround, right? They were picking second in the draft last year, and now by all intents and purposes, they're probably looking at a playoff spot. But of those 5 games, 3 include losses to the Steelers, this same Eagles team, and the Cowboys. They got one blowout win against the Titans, which I mean, that was nice for them to win that, but how much do you value a blowout win against the Tennessee Titans? And then a 1 point nail biter against the crippled Saints in Darren Rizzi last week. The Saints they effectively tied up the game. It was I believe 19-20, and they went for two. They just went for the win. The Saints didn't get it, so the Redskins got away, but that was really like way closer than it needed to be. So to me, I just feel like that this Skins team has just been struggling a little more than they had earlier in the year. I think we need to call that out. Whether or not you think it's teams having more tape on a mobile Jaden Daniels, whether or not you think it's Cliff Kingsbury's scheme kind of running its course near the end of the year, I don't know where you exactly want to put the blame, but I think we have to recognize this Redskins team at least hasn't been as dynamic as they were earlier, right? So the last time I look at the last time these two teams met, Philly won comfortably 26-18. Jaden's numbers in that game were 23 for 32, 199 yards, one garbage time touchdown to Zach Ertz in like the last minute to bring it to from 26-11 to 26-18, and then an interception. So Philly played Jaden really tight that week. I mean, I think the Eagles defense has continued to show that they're one of the best, if not the best unit in the league. They played him good last time. I don't see why that would change this time, right? In building off the defense a little bit more, Cooper DeJean, the reliable whites, and Vic Fangio have been dominating. Philly right now has earned their way to be first in points allowed, first in yards allowed, first in passing defense, and seventh in rushing defense in the entire NFL. And this was like coming off a 4 week stretch at the beginning of the year where their passing defense was giving up a ton of yards. So they've been playing at like an unbelievable level. I've loved having them in fantasy. Like I was able to scoop the Eagles up everywhere off of waivers. I actually slight sports card fan enthusiast. I actually pulled a Cooper DeJean autograph, so I knew about the guy before he became elite. But yeah, it's been a really fun ride watching what this Eagles defense has been able to do. And the last time they played, right, they clamped Terry, who's by far the best weapon, not named Jaden Daniels, on the team. He only had one catch for 10 yards, so like you're just not going to beat this iteration of the Philadelphia Eagles if your best player on offense is getting one catch for 10 yards. We'll see how that matchup looks. I believe it'll be Kenyon Mitchell on Terry. I think he's second right now in Rookie of the Year voting. Should be a fun matchup to watch. Then Saquon's chasing history on the Philly side, right? He only needs 418 yards over the next 3 weeks to break Eric Dickerson's all-time rushing record. So, to me, I'm expecting Nick Sirianni and the Philadelphia Eagles to do everything they can to try and get Saquon to beat that record. Should be a heavy dose of him in stat padding, especially if the Eagles go up and get a positive game script against the Redskins' 24th ranked rush defense. There's nothing like watching Saquon Barkley just rip off these long, just insane runs. I think that he's like one of the best, like see the whole gone explosive running backs in the league. It's been a real treat to watch him. I could see at least a couple of those this week, even if it doesn't go for a touchdown, like maybe 40, 50 yard runs, that type of deal. So in my opinion, we got to call it like we see it, right? Even though this Redskins team has been a fun story all year, I'd say this Philly team at this point in time is the clear front runner to make the Super Bowl out of the NFC, with the Lions being picking up as many injuries as they have been, and this Redskins team over the past 5 weeks has been playing like a fringe wildcard team. Like, I don't see them playing significantly better than the Seahawks at this point, than the Rams at this point, all of those teams that kind of like are in the little, either a wild card team or like in the mix. I don't see them playing significantly better. So I think maybe they're a little bit worse than their record indicates right now. So in my opinion, 3.5 is a short enough number here to be on the wrong side of the hook. I need more than a field goal to win, but I feel like this number is maybe 3 or 4 points off where it should be. Fly Eagles fly, taking the Eagles minus 3.5. What do you think, Yanni? Did you like that Nick Sirianni bit? I did that especially for you.
Yeah, I mean, I like the like 3 points in there that prove how wrong it is right afterward. That was really good. So I would say that I took a long, hard look at this game. I like your pick. I think you have the right side of it. I think Jaden was pretty banged up for that month stretch where their offense took a pretty big hit. Yes, they did wreck him. Yes, this team has been wrecking teams in general. They also had trouble with the Panthers, dude. They were dropped Xavier Legette pass away from the Panthers getting them. They've also had Saquon getting a little banged up. I think even though AJ Brown's off the injury report, I don't think he can possibly be totally healthy after that hip drop he took last week. Um, so I just think there were enough reasons for me to wonder. I wonder. We'll see, dude. You never know, right? I think you're right. I think you have the right side. Look, I would have bet this if I could have, but for me, it was just this weird question of, do we see Jaden's best game as a pro here? It's at home. It's against the biggest, baddest team in the whole NFC, and I think the kid's had some really impressive performances. And I think he was injured the last time they played. I don't think he was 100%. And I just wonder if we see like a real ceiling game out of Jaden, and they pull out the upset at home. That was enough to just scare me off of it, but that might be because I'm so biased toward Jaden Daniels. I do think you have the right side, and I do think this hits.
I hope for just like viewing pleasure that Jaden does that, because I'd
Yeah,
love to see a duel. I'd love to see like a shootout duel here between these two teams. But
yeah,
we
we'll
shall
see.
see. All right, next one is also me. It's the Titans going into Indianapolis to play the Colts, and I'm taking the Colts. I'm taking the Colts minus 3.5. I just cannot quit this team. The over/under on the game is 42.5 points. We got 56% of the money on the Colts against the spread, and we got 61% of bets on the Colts against the spread. So there's a slight consensus on the Colts ATS pick from the betting public and a slight fade from the whales here. That's fine. Sometimes I'll swim the different direction than the whales, and I'm doing so here. I think this is the ultimate buy low on this Colts football team. They effectively had the Broncos dead to rights last week until they legitimately beat themselves with 21-point swing in 2 plays. Those 2 plays being Jonathan Taylor fumbling just before the goal line into a touchback, giving the Broncos the ball back. That cost me potentially my fantasy matchup in the semifinals. And then there was the trick play where AD Mitchell threw a pick six. It was like, I don't know if anyone else has seen this play. I know Yanni's seen this play. It was like a swing pass over to AD Mitchell, and the play call was supposed to be to throw the ball back to Anthony Richardson. The Broncos linebacker just saw it, picked it, ran untouched into the end zone. So those 2 plays were effectively a 21-point swing. So I mean, yes, the Broncos beat the crap out of the Colts last week, but I really think the Colts beat themselves more than anything else, right? Let's talk about the Anthony Richardson experience here. Just overall, like from a macro perspective, this season has not been pretty. With a 47% completion percentage, this is the lowest completion percentage for a quarterback since Tim Tebow. So we have a historical outlier here. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that Anthony Richardson is not Tim Tebow, and this is still technically his rookie season, right? He's been taking his lumps. Old AR. He's had his good moments. He's had his bad moments. He's had more good moments than bad moments, I think, since he took over the job again in Week 11. He's had a litany of circumstances. He's had his receivers dropping the ball. He's had receivers going out of bounds. He's had like some weird decision making where I think sometimes he pushes the ball way deeper down the field than it needs to go. Right? It seems like he's hungry to hit that big play. He has right now he's first in the NFL in big play throws when he's protected in the pocket, so he is hitting them sometimes, right? But inherently, like a throw 40 yards down the field gets completed less than a check down to the running back, right? So I really do think Anthony Richardson is becoming an NFL caliber, good dual threat quarterback. He's not Tim Tebow. I've seen some outrageous talk from Colts fans in the media. I've seen Colts fans wanting to give up on Anthony Richardson, bring in Sam Darnold. Colin Cowherd has gone on record saying that Anthony Richardson is not a real NFL quarterback. I think it's just too early to tell with the kid, and you got to give him time to grow. And this is his time to grow, right? On the other side, the Tennessee Titans are 2-12 against the spread this year with 3 total wins. So when you look at that, right, they're a bad football team that consistently underperforms Vegas's expectations, and they've benched Will Levis, who was like coming into the year potentially going to be their franchise quarterback. I think this year was really a tryout for him to get that position. That has failed and crashed and burned miserably, and now at this point they're so far down in the draft order. They're going to be in the 2025 quarterback draft lottery, whether that's Shitter Sanders or Cam Ward, whatever. They're taking quarterback round one, and this feels like a full blown tank the rest of the way to preserve that draft positioning. The Titans have had a decent defense all year, but they're just not the same or nearly as healthy as they were at the beginning of the year. L'Jarius Sneed and Quandre Diggs are on IR. Ernest Jones got traded, and 3 linebackers on the unit are either DNP'd or were limited in practice this week. So I effectively think this is going to be a preseason game for Anthony Richardson against like the twos for the Tennessee Titans defense. So I'm not really respecting the defense as much in this one. Shane Steichen is still a dog. It would not be free Tendies fantasy without Ted talking about Shane Steichen. This is kind of what I was talking about earlier, right? The Colts fans are losing their minds. I've seen we haven't been to the playoffs in 8 years. We're one of the worst organizations in the league over 8 years. Chris Ballard's a mess. Get rid of him. Anthony Richardson's a mess. Get rid of him. There's just like insane negative talk around the league and by the local reporters. So I think Indy's going to come out pissed in this one. Side bet for the fans: Anthony Richardson anytime touchdown is paying out over 2-1. I think that at this point, when the Colts get inside the 5 yard line, he's the most likely guy to take it in. I don't mind a sprinkle on that as well if you're feeling frisky. So 3.5, I'd still call it a tiny number against a team that's been injured, is starting Mason Rudolph, and has not been covering all year. A bad Anthony Richardson game absolutely could bungle this pick. I've said this before. Anthony Richardson is a very high variance player, right? When you get a terrible Anthony Richardson game, it like basically kills any chance your team has of winning. I recognize that could happen, but I've got faith in the kid that he is a better product since week 11 than he has been all year, and he's still growing. This is the only reason I didn't put it in the parlay too, right? I was like, I'll bet it as a single just to kind of take out that extra hurt if Anthony Richardson plays bad here. But I'm betting this with confidence. Colts minus 3.5. I love it. What do you think, Yanni? Am I crazy for just continuing to come back to this Colts team?
No, I mean I think it's a pretty good call. Actually, I'm surprised that only 56% of the dollars are on the Colts against the spread. I would think that would be a sharp pick here. Um, I to me the only weird thing is to me you have no clue what you're getting with both of these teams on a week to week basis. That's the whole thing, right? I just don't know. I think what the one thing that you hammered that's absolutely correct is the one lean we have. You generally get a bad product out of the Titans relative to what the market's priced them at. So I mean, I think you got a great pick here. It's smart, man, and I love Anthony Richardson this week in fantasy, by the way. So just in general, yeah, man, I love it. I think you're right. I think Jonathan Taylor has a great game. Um, it'll be interesting to see if Tony Pollard misses. How does Spears do in that role? But yeah, I think you're on the right side of it. I'm never betting the Titans again after they destroyed me. Um, okay, going back to the well one more time after getting burnt on the Lions last week. Lions minus 6.5 at the Bears, taking a big divisional road favorite. I understand, right? That is the big trend. We're breaking it here. But the whales and the public agree with me. 91% of every dollar that's been bet has gone on the Lions against the spread, and 82% of every bet that's been placed has gone on the Lions against the spread. This is a terrible matchup for the Bears defense. Not just bad, it is fucking awful. They are 26 against the rush, going against MCDC and his high T rushing attack. I know Montgomery's a really good player, but I actually think their backup dudes are really good too. And we all understand what Gibbs is, right? Gibbs is being ranked in a lot of fantasy rankings where I'm seeing as the number one overall asset rest of season. And I think there's a pretty clear argument to do that. In half PPR right now, in half PPR fantasy, he is being given 19.2 points projected. It is the highest projected point total I've seen on a player all year. This is a really bad matchup, and this is why. Gibbs is going to get a featured role. Gibbs is going to get the Christian McCaffrey, the prime Christian McCaffrey workload on the year playing part time. Dude, there are games where he's playing 40 to 50% of the snaps, some games where he's playing 60%. He has 1,047 rushing yards, 395 receiving yards, 14 touchdowns, and is averaging 5.62 yards per carry. This is a certified eruption spot for Sonic. I love the nickname. I love the narrative. I love how he views himself. I love how seriously the kid takes it. If you guys watched, I highly doubt, this is going years back now, but me and Ted had Gibbs ranked, I believe, top 15 coming out his rookie year, even when he was with Montgomery on the Lions at first. We have been high on this kid for years. I believe both me and Ted had, I'm not sure if Ted had 50%, but at least 25% roster exposure to him after the draft. I had 30% roster exposure to him in the draft this year. This has just been a big part of both of our fandoms. It's a huge dude. I think he's every bit the player Bijan is. He just has not gotten the role. And I think we're going to see something pretty crazy this week out of a rush funnel defense in a huge game. I mean, the Lions are fighting to. I don't think it'll get to this point, but could you imagine if they had to go on the road to like Philly or go on the road to the Packers, right? And like,
I think they
or
will. I don't think they win the North.
so
I think
let's
the Vikings will get it.
So okay, so let's say the Vikings get it. Could you imagine the difference for the Lions in playing at home throughout the playoffs, or on the road, or at the minimum until the championship, or on the road? I mean, this is a huge moment in their whole franchise overall. And Jared Goff is coming off the second best game of his career with 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. Jared, we did not know you had it in you, dude. And same to Amon-Ra St. Brown. We never see them in a negative game script, so we didn't know really what that would look like. I had a fantasy game where um, I had Amon-Ra St. Brown going against Jahmyr Gibbs, and they were both at like 5 or 6 points, something like that at halftime. And at the end of the game, it was like 30 to 27 points between the two of them. You just saw incredible offense, right? I did not think they were capable of that, and they clearly are. Once you show a skill, you own it. I think they have real offensive upside for the rest of the year because I think they're going to be in more negative game scripts. I believe currently they have 14 players on the IR. And of those players on the IR, the majority of them are core defensive players, right? So I think the Bears are going to make them produce offensively a little bit. I think the Lions are going to answer the call and answer the call in a big way. And I think we've seen from MCDC, if he gets a lead, he doesn't really take his foot off the gas, right? So he's totally willing to go up 21 points and keep playing pretty hard football. So I'm not too worried about like a backdoor cover here. I'm really not. Caleb Williams looks like he does not want to be out there. He looks like he's ready to go home. He's got these exasperated, like embarrassing expressions he's doing on the sideline. I think this is a put him out of your misery game. I've taken a couple of those this week. I think this is another one, and I'm very confident that the Lions can cover 6.5.
Yeah, this one. So this one, I could not get there on either side in this game. This might be a scalding hot take. I don't know. But to me, I think the Lions are so banged up at this point on the defensive side that I view that team is like Tampa Bay Buccaneers level, where they have like a really great offense that's gonna score points pretty much no matter who they play, right? But their defense is just going to be hemorrhaging yards the entire time. It feels like they're the mirror image of the Bucks, where the Bucks have like this incredibly exciting passing game with Baker Mayfield, and now Bucky Irving's coming along, but for the most part, it's been Baker, right? And then the Lions are just this ground and pound team with the passing game is more of a compliment. So that being
Yeah.
said, right, I think that against any team that I feel like has a consistent to good offense, um, I would be scared laying 6.5 points with the Lions. But it's against the Bears, who are the most. I have no idea what this team is doing on a week to week basis. I would assume it's not going to be good, right? But we've had performances where Caleb has just randomly looked good. The last time these two teams played, it was when Matt
Yeah.
Eberflus got fired on Thanksgiving, right? The Bears played the Vikings to overtime. But then the Bears got blown out by the Vikings last week. I just really don't know what to make of this offense. I couldn't tell you
Yep.
if Caleb will have a good or bad week. I think will have a bad week. And then the only other thing I have about this game is we'll see how Jared Goff does against the outdoor game narrative, right? I think that was more of a thing coming into this year, but he had a couple really good games outdoors where he played well, and I'm not sure if handicappers are looking at that as much, but historically Jared Goff has not played as well outdoors. we'll see how it looks this week, especially if the Lions are in a negative game script. All right, next one is the Rams at the Jets, and I'm going to take the Rams -3 here. The over/under on this game is 46.5 points. We got 72% of the money on the Rams against the spread and 72% of bets on the Rams against the spread. So there's no notable whale action here. It's just a general consensus on the Rams against the spread, which is what I'm riding with. I'm flagging this as like the buy low, sell high opportunity of the week. I know I said that earlier, but this one I think is even more so because it's on both ends, right? The Rams are coming off an ugly no touchdown win against the 49ers in the rain, where I think a lot of people were concerned about the Rams offense, right? Like if you were a fantasy manager that had Cooper Kupp or Stafford or really any Rams player that was not Kyron Williams or Puka Nakua, right? There's a good chance you got knocked out of the playoffs. And the Jets have been watchable over the past 2 weeks. So I think that you caught the Rams coming off like a bad week, right? But they have the extra 3 days of rest, and you're coming off the Jets offense actually looking good. So I think the Rams are better than they should, and I think the Jets offense is worse than it showed, right? Aaron has been heating up. Over the past 2 weeks, he has 628 yards passing, 6 touchdowns, and no interceptions, which honestly, man, I love to see for the player. There's no mystery. I am a big Aaron Rodgers fan. I really like the player. It's been a bummer watching how the Jet season has gone this year, but I'm happy to see him having a little bit of success here, right? But I think we have to ask ourselves how much of that is like real. The weather report is saying that this game should be in the 20s in New York. So can a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers look as good as he did in Florida weather for the past 2 games as he does in the cold this week, right? I get that he comes from Green Bay. I get that Aaron is not a stranger to these cold weather games, but he looked really good in 2 games with Florida weather, right? And now he's going out there with his 41-year-old body to like a game in the 20s. It'll be windy in MetLife. I just don't know how his body will or his play will respond to it. I don't think he will have as good of a week passing the ball though as he has the past 2 weeks. Next point, Sean McVay versus Jeff Ulbrich is probably one of the top 3 coaching mismatches of the year to me. And just in general, these teams are headed in entirely different directions. The Rams are scratching and clawing right now to win the NFC West. It's on the table for them. They control their own destiny. If they win out, they will win the division. And the Jets are just playing for pride at this point, being eliminated mathematically last week, but really the dream has been over for like 5 weeks at this point. It's just like you have the coaching advantage. You have a team that's playing for way more versus like interim head coach with a team that's just kind of playing for their pride, right? I know Aaron Rodgers, like he wants to go out like looking good. I think this is it for him. He's got 3 weeks of football left in the NFL. I know he's gonna want to go out like playing his best football, but I'm not sure how much the guys around him are on that same wavelength. I think a lot of those guys are getting ready for Cancun at this point. So there's some historical trends that have said to fade Matt Stafford in the cold, but I'm just not taking that too seriously. I think Matt Stafford is too good and too established of a quarterback at this point. I'm not worried about a little bit of cold affecting Matt Stafford. The Rams can beat you in multiple ways when they have their big four in Puka, in Cooper Kupp, in Kyron Williams, and Stafford. If one phase of the offense struggles, right? Like let's just say Matt Stafford comes out and the cold is affecting him a little bit. I think McVay is going to be able to pivot to what's working, which would be running the ball against a Jets defense that just is not the same in any way, shape, or form as they have been in prior years with Robert Saleh. So overall, right, I think 3 weeks ago this line might have opened up like Rams as a touchdown favorite or 8 point favorite, right? I think the Jets are playing a little better than they were over these past 2 weeks, but it's not a 4 to 5 point difference in freezing temperatures. I only need a field goal to win, a field goal to push, and anything over is a win. I'll play it. Rams -3. What do you think, Yanni?
I think it's a great buy low, sell high, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're selling high on the highest the Jets have been all year, and you're buying low on the lowest the Rams have been in a month. Really smart. I do think the weather maybe matters a little bit, but if it's really bad, if for some reason there are passing issues, you know what McVay is going to do. He's going to grind the football 25, 30 times, right?
Yep.
Um, so yeah, no, I think that's great. Yeah, I look if Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, if Devontae Adams doesn't have the longest touchdown of his career last week, and one of the best football games from a wide receiver we've seen. Like, well, you see maybe one of the 10 best games you'll see every year. If that doesn't happen, they might have lost last week as it was. So yeah, fantastic buy low, sell high.
All right, this one's me too. We're going to take the Vikings -3. The over-under on this game is 42.5 points. We got 53% of the money on the Vikings against the spread and 68% of bets on the Vikings against the spread. In the words of my favorite content creator, Chad Millman, we have a pros versus Joes game here. The public is betting the Vikings against the spread, and big money is coming in on Seattle. So I'm happy to be called a Joe because I think out of all of the picks this week, I think this is probably my favorite one. And this is coming from a guy who has not been wanting to ride the Vikings wave all year. And I just think this is a really good spot for this Minnesota team. Right now, we'll start with the Seahawks side, right? Geno Smith should be in this week, but his knee injury, it looked really significant against the Packers last week, and he couldn't even return to the game. And you know that Geno would have been back in that game if he could have gone, right? So how mobile and ready is Geno going to be in this spot? 100% of Geno Smith, I would say, is already not great. So 75 to 80% of a Geno Smith is got to be even worse, in my opinion. That's not a very good starting point if you were the Seahawks. This Vikings defense, I think, should make Seattle one-dimensional here. They're second in rushing yards allowed on defense and fifth in sacks for, and they're going against the 30th ranked offensive line according to Pro Football Network. And the Seahawks have surrendered the fourth most sacks in the NFL. Right, so if you can't run against the Vikings get a lot of sacks, and you have a quarterback that is maybe mid, and he's going to be 75 to 80% of himself. When you combine all of that together, this feels to me like a game where Geno Smith is going to be asked to drop back 50 plus times in catch up mode against the zone blitz happy Vikings defense that kills quarterbacks behind a duct tape O line. It just seems like all of the things like are kind of stacking up together to make this a terrible day offensively for Geno and the Seahawks. If Geno can get the ball out quickly, right, and beat the zone blitz, that's how you beat zone blitz. You come up with these cheap little throws to get the ball in space. You make the first guy miss. There's no one behind him, right? It's possible that the Seahawks could have success here, but I don't see it with all of these factors. I think it's gonna be I think it's gonna be Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet, whoever getting stuffed because the line can't open holes. Then Geno dropping back twice, having no time, getting just beaten up and sad, right? So let the record show I am not a Sam Darnold guy, but his weapons feel too good to fail at this point, and by that measure, right? I think his coaching is just elite. I think he has an elite coach and great weapons. So to me, all Kevin O'Connell has been asking Sam to do all year is just not completely burn the house down with bad turnovers. Like he's just asking him to manage the game, and he's done that, and I think a little bit more at times this year. So I would say Sam has done a good enough job of that this year. He's just staying out of the way. He's letting Brian Flores and the defense do what they're doing. He's letting his offensive players do what they're doing, right? And I think he's going to be able to maintain at least that level of not being a total reason that you lose that he's been showing this year. So as long as the quarterback doesn't sell you, right? I think this Vikings skill position unit will be able to score against the Seattle defense. I get that the Seahawks defense has been playing better, and as a prior Seahawks defensive hater, I think they actually do have something going there. But you're asking that unit to find an answer for stopping Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, who's been breaking out the past month, TJ Hawkinson, and Aaron Jones. That isn't Sam Darnold just selling the team, going on the quarter and selling the fucking game. I don't see it. I don't see like any defense that can deal with that, right? So unless you have to get in Sam's head. It's the only way I think that they could have success defensively. So -3, in my opinion, is entirely too short of a number against a banged up and I would say not good Seattle team. And I think there's a couple things here. I think that there's like the betting community just really respects the Seahawks team for whatever reason. Even last week, betting the Seahawks against the spread against the Packers was a hot pick for whatever reason. And I think bettors are also excited to fade this Vikings team, which I think people are looking at them and saying, how is Sam Darnold 11-2? How is this Vikings team with a bunch of no names all over their defense 11-2? And trust me, I'm ready to fade them too. but not over a field goal here. I feel like this is easy money, Vikings -3. What do you think, Yanni?
So I think the Seahawks win the game. I think they're going to win this one, and I think they're going to win because I you got to remember what McDonald does, right? Their head coach developed his scheme specifically to counteract the Shanahan scheme in the NFL. He plays in the division where he plays a quarter of his games a year against the Shanahan scheme. He has been so successful against it, and the Seahawks defense, besides the Packers game, which I'm aware was a Shanahan scheme game, but really what the Packers game was to me was a Josh Jacobs game. That was like Josh Jacobs is going to smash you in the face, right? That was like a really impressive physical showing from them. I think they got out physical, and then Gino got hurt, and then it was really done. Um, I don't think I think with the disguised coverages, right? With the disguised coverages that specifically are meant to mess up Sam Darnold's reads, so he can't go through that binary first read, second read, ball out of a hand, right? Or safety did this, I'm dropping the ball here. I mean, that is what McDonald seeks to disrupt with his scheme. And then when you see the way that they've been taking to it the last 4 to 6 weeks, I think you walked into a trap bet here. Seahawks at home. I don't know if they're going to be able to smash the ball with Aaron Jones the way the Packers were with Josh Jacobs, which is really what drove that game for them. I expect a pick or two from Sam Darnold. So to me, I think if Gino is healthy, if they're being honest about that, and he's going against a team that allows the most production to receivers in the NFL, I think you may have taken the bait on this one. I think you may have
I
taken the
think
bait.
that is the most strong. That is the most strong. I think you're wrong in the. I think this year.
I oh yeah, well,
That was
I don't.
awesome, dude. I love it. I love it.
I mean, I'm not. I don't just say shit to like be controversial. But I think you're wrong about that one.
Well, I mean, you see it in the betting public too, right? Like it's a pros versus Joes game. Like you can see these heavy. There's a lot of big whales that are betting on the Seahawks team. So
Yeah,
we'll see. I might have stepped in shit here, but
you got a good number. You got -3 with an 11-2 team playing a team that I think is probably 5% above average, right? So if you're getting 3 points against for an 11-2 team against a team that I think is just above the middle of the pack and with an injured quarterback, right? Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you're probably getting a good. And they've had what? Sharps barely practiced this week. Kenneth Walker barely practiced this week. DK barely practiced this week. Gino only practiced half the week. Like I think there's a lot of reasons to like it too. By the way, I do think the Seahawks win this game.
I loved it. I avoided the Vikings all year betting on them. Either that or I faded them. And then 2 of the
Yeah,
last 3 weeks I've taken them somehow. I don't know. I really do think they win the NFC North, and it's not because they're the best team in the division. I think it's just how the record shakes out, which would be interesting. I think the NFC playoffs will be very interesting. But
we'll see. Big game for the NFC playoff seeding. Okay, and a game that sadly does not affect the NFC playoff seeding. The 49ers at the Dolphins. 49, I'm taking the 49ers money line on a 44.5 point over under. 65% of the money that's been bet on the money line has gone on the 49ers, despite only 41% of the bets going on the 49ers on the money line. That is a 24% whale lean, big money coming in for the 49ers here on the money line. I don't check those beforehand, but I always say I like it when I get on here and I see that the whales agree with me. Whales, obviously, if you have more skin in the game, if you're regularly putting more skin in the game, you are probably a sharper better. I hope that's true, at least. I hope you're not betting, 5 or 10 grand a weekend just to lose it. The Dolphins are the definitive can crushers. A pretty astounding statistic. Mike McDaniel, since taking over for the team, has a 3-15 record against teams above 500. The 49ers are an above 500 quality team, even though they have not shown it. I'm not being a homer there. I think most fans would agree this is a significantly underperforming 49ers team. I understand Trent Williams is out. I understand that's the ghost of Deebo Samuel playing out there. I understand Ayuk is out. I get it. There are some reasons that the 49ers are not what they were, but also in a weird way, this is almost the most healthy their defense has been all year, which I think is a key driving factor in all this. The 49ers defense is going to feature, most likely, it sounds like Bosa's likely to go. Greenlaw, Bosa, Fred, Huff, Mooney, Ward, all of those guys are out there to play Tua. I wish I could remember off the top of my head. I would just be making up the stats if I did it, but Tua's drop off in both the college and pros against teams that are 500 or better, it is hilarious. You're talking about like a difference in 20 or 30 points of QBR. I think the one thing that I'm a little worried about in taking this, but again, I'm still willing to do it for the really good payout right here on the Niners money line. Tua and the Dolphins have done really well against cover three, and the Niners run the highest rate of cover three in the NFL at 51%. Jonnu Smith is like almost at, I think it's like 3.75 yards per route run against that. Tyreek Hill's under 3, but he's close to it. They don't have Waddle this week. I do think they're going to be able to move the ball a little bit. I think the Dolphins are going to be able to move the ball a little bit. I just think that the Niners defense will show up enough, and I think the Niners offense will show up enough that it won't matter. Shanahan is generally very successful against his own coaching tree. Him and Mike McDaniel go way back, and I mean way back to like when Mike McDaniel was 12 or 13 years old, running around on the sideline, right, of the Broncos practices. I think they know exactly what they want to do offensively. I think a lot of what McDaniel does is essentially right I don't even want to say watered down because he actually does his own things and his own unique things. And then some things he's actually better than Kyle. Kyle hates running screenplays, for example. Mike McDaniel's extremely effective with that like slant screen we've seen from A-Chain all year. But it's derivative of what Kyle does. And generally speaking, in almost all circumstances, when Kyle has gone against his proteges, yeah, they'll get a win here and there. But the Niners tend to beat up on them. I think missing Waddle does really matter. Not in a huge way, but like Waddle's still a very good football player. I know he's not what he has been. And also the 49ers are allowing the second least production in the NFL to tight ends. So even though the scheme and the coverage lines up hypothetically well for Jonnu Smith, you got Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw and Hufanga, and even Brown is a pretty good player. You have those guys in there that are going to be taking him. I don't think he's going to have a big game. Tyreek Hill also cropped up at the last minute with a questionable tag. He went from healthy all week to questionable right before the game. So you got the Can Crusher narrative. You have the Shanahan disciple narrative. For a lot of reasons, I'm totally happy to get a really good number. I believe the money line was at minus 106 for this one.
Yeah. So surprisingly, they weren't paying over 2-1. Usually they do on the money line
Yeah.
when you give away a point. But I love that you picked this game. Over the past 2 years we've been doing this, you have had a much better read on when to hit these 49ers lines than I have. I think I haven't won a game betting the 49ers the last 2 years, and you've won the majority of them. So
Yeah.
glad to see that. Glad to see you're on it. I cannot wait to see Fred Warner sniff out one of those Devon Achan PPR scam dump offs in the backfield and just crunch him behind the line. I really want to see that. I'm rooting for my Niners this week. I will be the biggest homer. I think you're right here. I think that it's all about the can crusher, right? And I think this 49ers team is just so much better than they've shown on tape this year. I think we get a statement game here, especially now that Devondre Campbell is out of the building.
By the way, dude, he'll be lucky if it's Fred Warner. If it's not Fred Warner, it's going to be Hufanga or Greenlaw with a 5 or 6 yard head start. And dude, God, man, if you end up with Dre Greenlaw on a 5 yard head start on a slant like that, good luck, man. Okay, the last game on our slate, and my last game. Another team that's like a passion project of mine betting on. I always seem to be picking the Bucks here and there when I can. I love taking my shots on them. I feel like they're a really, really well-run organization, and I love Baker Mayfield. I love their veteran players. I just, for whatever reason, I find myself picking the Bucks, and I'm always so happy when I do it. Bucks minus 3.5 at the Cowboys. 85% of the dollars bet have been on the Bucks. 75% of the bets placed have gone on the Bucks. So a whale lean by about 10% there. But in general, it seems like this is a pros and Joe's pick. Here's what you have going on. Baker, Mike Evans, and Bucky versus the Cowboys defense. The Cowboys defense currently ranks 26th in points allowed, 21st against the pass, 29th against the rush. They should have no trouble scoring here. The Bucks defense is ranked 11th in yards allowed on the ground, and part of their defense has traditionally been their strength. And that part of the defense has traditionally been their strength. If they can slow down the blazing hot Rico Dowdle, will Cooper Rush be able to carry the team? I think Rico Dowdle's breakout has actually been what's driving them for the most part. I know CD's looked better, but to me, that's actually a function of their really effective running game. If they cannot run the game the way they have been, can Cooper Rush drop back 25 or 30 times? Probably 30 times, right? If they can't rush the ball and effectively do that. I don't think he can. And the Cowboys have been an entirely different team, ahead by 2 scores and down by 2 scores. The Buccaneers have 7 touchdowns on their opening drive this year, which leads the NFL. We have very little faith that the Cowboys can get up early and pin their ears back and pass rush. If the Buccaneers can rush in this one, the Cowboys have a bottom 3 rush defense. They have Bucky Irving, they have Rashad White, and they're the most likely team in the NFL to score a touchdown on their opening drive. You also have this awesome narrative where Mike Evans needs 84 receiving yards a game for the rest of the year. You have Baker sitting there on the podium saying, I take that more seriously than he does to get that to him. I think we see Mike Evans getting force fed versus depleted Cowboys secondary. I think Bucky Irving finds all the room in the world. I think Rashad White finds all the room in the world in this one. So look, it's all right there. They go up 7-0 first drive of the game. They get a stop, they get a score, they're up 10-0. All of a sudden, you have more dropbacks and an already tough rushing matchup for Dowdle. They can't rely on the rush as much. I just think it's this cascading series of events that feels very likely to me at this point. The Cowboys, it is in their best interest to lose football games at this point. They haven't been that good at home this year, and the Buccaneers are competing for a home playoff game. I love the direction the Buccaneers are going. I hate the direction the Cowboys are going. I hate the matchup. I mean, the defense versus offensive matchup on either side of the ball here to me is not even close. And that's if Dak Prescott were playing, I would still feel that way. We're talking about Baker Mayfield versus Cooper Rush. Baker Mayfield is not a top 3 or top 5 quarterback in the NFL, but he's certainly played like one this year. I believe Kate Otten too. They're getting either back or he's in. He was questionable this week. I don't think the Cowboys are going to keep him up. I felt really good about this one. I was surprised to see Ted not take it. Ted doesn't like betting the Bucks as much. I cannot think of Ted very frequently going in on the Buccaneers. But I very confidently did, and I think this one's going to be ugly, and I think it's going to be ugly fast.
Well, the primary reason I did not pick this game is just how the Cowboys defense has looked over the past month, right? Like I think it's been I have to appreciate what I've seen from the Cowboys. They really have been playing better defense with Micah Parsons in there. I
Yeah.
do think that it does come down to this game flow thing though, right? Because the Cowboys have over the past month have had the ability to go up early in games, and then they've been able to just kind of tee off. Like I think they sacked Bryce Young 7 times last week, forced 4 turnovers. They've been forcing turnovers at an absolutely insane clip. So I think that yeah, at the end of the first quarter, if you see the Bucks up 10, 14, 17 to nothing, 10, 14, 17 to 3, I think it's a very good chance it comes home. I just it just scared me a little bit with the way because I think Cooper Rush is an okay player, right? Like he's not a good quarterback, but I think he's like doing okay. So and the Bucks are so beat up on the back end. I think that there's gonna be room for CD here, but it's like is that a situation where there's room for CD down 20 points in the third quarter, right? Or is it a more meaningful type of production?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I just found 5 other ones that I preferred, but I would absolutely ride with the Bucks -3.5 here if I had to pick a side. But anyways, I believe that's going to do it for us. If you made it through the whole video, thank you. Please like, subscribe, hit the bell. It helps the channel out. We're getting down to the wire, boys. We got one more episode of Head Coach left. We got 2 more episodes of the Gambling Show left, and then maybe I don't know if we'll do postseason stuff. I think we'll mix in at least 1 or 2 Mystery Mondays in between the time the season ends and now. But we're making it to the down to the wire. If you've rode with us the entire way, seriously, we appreciate you. The growth on the channel, we're still peanuts in the grand scheme of things, but really it's been cool to see like how many people are viewing in, how many watch hours we're getting, how many people are genuinely interested in the content. Still not a lot, I get it, but holy shit, like it feels good, man. Question of the day for the
I have one.
audience. You got one?
I have one. Is Nick Sirianni a good head coach?
Let us know
Are
in the
there
comments. Yeah.
are there actually Nick Sirianni truthers out there? I'd like to know. I'm just really curious.
You know
Thank
I'm
you.
10 toes down on the Sirianni propaganda. All right, he's the best heel coach in all of the NFL.
I found that out unconsensually and by surprise today. Yes, I did.
All
Thanks, guys.
right, and we'll catch you guys next week for episode TBD.